This far back and to your right. Go to the right a bit. Oh no, that's even. No, that's worse. That's worse. No, there. That's better.
I'll try not to move. If I'm reading the agenda or papers when we're live streaming. Okay.
Right, we're not quite there. Just,
okay.
There's nobody waiting to watch anyway, so we're all right. They obviously know how riveting highways is. Right, okay.
No, that's worse. That's worse.
Perfect. Okay, hello and welcome everyone to Liss Parish Council's Highways Committee meeting. We are live streaming on YouTube, so nice to have you with us. I think the first item is to introduce ourselves and go around and talk about declarations of interest. So I will do that in alphabetical order. And actually, I will do it first as the chair of the committee. My name's Andy Smith. I come of Liss Parish Council, councillor on Liss Parish Council. I confirm that I've read the agenda and I have no interests to declare. So I'll go to Sheila next.
You're on mute, Sheila. Yeah, no one hear you.
Right, my name's Sheila Baldwin. I'm a member of Liss Parish Council Highways Committee. I have read the agenda and I have no interests to declare.
Councillor Budden.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Keith Budden. I am a member of the Liss Parish Council Highways Committee. I've read the agenda and I've no interest to declare in any of the items on the agenda this evening.
Councillor Lindsley.
I am Howard Lindsley, Parish Councillor of Liss Parish Council. I've read the agenda and I've no items to declare.
Councillor MacDonald.
Hi, Leanne MacDonald. I'm a parish councillor of Liss Parish Council and the Highways Committee. I confirm that I've read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening.
Councillor Wilson, nice to see you.
Thank you. I'm Nick Wilson, a member of Liss Parish Council and of the Highways Committee. I've read the papers and agenda and have no interest to declare.
I should also say that Councillor Claire Williams is dialing in as the chair of Finance Committee, and she'll be able to participate in the meeting but won't be able to vote as not a member of the Highways Committee. And Lizzie Keeling is also on the call as our assistant clerk, who will help advise us and guide us through the meeting and also take a note of the meeting. So I think first item is apologies. Have we had any apologies, Lizzie?
We've had apologies from Councillor Gerard.
And I think Councillor Hargreaves got in touch with me today and said he was unable to make the meeting as well. So, okay, we've done declarations of interest. Where's my next item is approval of the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January 2020. Leanne, I saw your changes and that spelling cock up is on me. I didn't notice it. Other than Leanne's change that she made, does anyone have any comments to make on the minutes, or are we happy to approve them?
I don't know what changes have been made.
Leanne spotted principal was spelt wrong, as in it was principal with an A-L rather than principal.
Oh, okay.
So that is...
Chair,
yes.
Just to say that apparently I was there because I said something, but I'm not in the list of participants.
Okay, you definitely were there. I remember you saying something. Okay, we will make that amendment. Thank you.
Apologies, Nick.
Any other comments? I'll take that as no. Could I have someone to... I'll move it. Could I have someone to second?
I'm happy to second this one.
Oh, okay. Leanne got there slightly first.
Leanne got there first, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone content with the minutes?
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Matters arising from the meeting on the 27th of January. I think probably most of them are covered under the items that we have coming up to discuss. Is there anything anyone else wanted to raise under matters arising?
Could I raise under 50.4 a confession that I haven't done the action which I committed myself to, which was to talk to the shopkeepers outside Tesco's or alongside Tesco's about the puddles. I had intended to, and I had intended to at the same time as talking to the manager at the funeral directors about the Christmas fair, for reasons I don't need to go into. And then we were locked down, so I haven't. But I actually think that that whole area should be considered when we come to the village centre item.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Nick. And I think if ever there's a good reason for not taking forward an action, probably what's been happening over the last few months is it. Okay, that's fine. So the next item that we have is questions from members of the public, if any. There aren't any members of the public, so we can move on to village centre redesign.
Is there an item missing? Number 5 has got a question mark next to it. Was there something missing there?
I think that's just an error on my part.
Yeah. So village centre redesign brief. So I don't propose to kind of go over the history or the kind of background to this, because we've had a good conversation in county council in the parish council meeting about it. This is now our opportunity to feed in any comments on the design brief as it goes forward to be considered and finalised by the project review group. I dialed into the planning committee meeting on Monday, I think, and there was a really good conversation about you know, the planning aspect of this, and some really good ideas from members of the committee about things that we might want to include, which Lizzie and I will look to include as we take this forward. So I will just open the conversation up now for people to feed in on the detail of the design brief and anything that they want to kind of mention. I'll go alphabetically in reverse. So I will go with Nick first of all.
Well, I've got 3 thoughts in addition to those we discussed at at planning. One was just to reinforce a point that Howard made at the planning committee meeting about the potential for rerouting of traffic. And I can see that there might be all sorts of disadvantages of trying to do some rerouting from Hillbrow Road along Andrews Asher Road, but I think it would be a pity to miss the opportunity to have that considered, particularly if, and I'm only speculating, but if our chosen advisor were to suggest good ways of making Station Road a better place for pedestrians, then it might become more necessary. But anyway, I just wanted to support Howard on that. My second thought was thinking about the issue of parking in Station Road that's come up recently in the dialogue with Hampshire County Council, and just against the possibility that we might have a proposal to widen pavements and so on, and possibly lose some parking spaces. I just wonder whether we should have a look, not we, but the person appointed should have a look at the potential of doing some deal with the owners of the station where the car park is underutilized, and in terms of short-term parking, because clearly they still want to make their money out of commuters. So that was the second thought, have a look at the station car park as a way of relieving the parking situation. And the third was just to include something about pavement surfaces, something that would make it a more sort of a pleasant environment. Those are my 3 thoughts.
Thank you, Nick. That all seems very reasonable, and I'm sure that's stuff that we could definitely include. Claire, do you want to participate on this? Is there anything you want to feed in?
No, I am just an observer.
I'm going to ask you each time just to make sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay then, Leanne, I think you're next.
Yeah, okay. The first thing I wanted to say was just from an admin point of view, I think that the document, the project initiation document, needs to have ownership, and the writers of that document need to be named, and it needs to have a date on it. I think that should have happened before it went to full council, because we still don't, nobody knows who wrote it. I think that's quite important. The other thing I had was that Nick's already dealt with the parking along Station Row, and whether the station car park could be utilised a bit better. I also wondered about consultation of the whole project with the residents of Liss, when that is going to happen. Are they going to have to wait until they're presented with something, or should we actually be going to them first to say, we're looking at enhancing the village centre, what are your thoughts? Because the village design statement is it's about 9 years old now. And, you know, people have moved into the village, people have moved out, people have died. Things have changed. We've got, you know, huge development going on in Andler's Ash. So should we be consulting? Well, actually, we should be consulting with people. It's about how we go about it and when we do it.
I agree with that, Leanne. Actually, if you read the document, consultation with the public is one of the key things in there. And actually, one of the things that we ask for is support from whomever we appoint, potentially, for 2 engagement events with the public about this as we develop, as well as bespoke consultation with specific groups, such as local businesses and that sort of thing. So I think consultation is absolutely crucial to it.
Yeah, I read this, but not everyone is going to be a member of the group, of a group.
No, that's why we're looking for support for general consultation as well in at least 2 events, which is part of the scope.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree. Consultation.
How far down the project route is it going to go before you have the consultation?
I think that's one of the things that we'll be asking for the advisor to give us some thoughts on. So I think the parish council's view when we discussed this at the meeting was we have a commitment out of the neighbourhood plan and our various documents to improve the village centre. So this is our work to move that forward. So we will need to go through the first stage, I guess, which is them saying actually there is something to do here, and it's not just about things that you could do as a parish council and therefore we don't decide to engage them. And then as we go to the second stage and start thinking about what schemes look like and whether they are deliverable, that's when I imagine we'd go to consultation. But ultimately, I think that's something for us to talk about in the project review group as we talk about the procurement and taking it forward.
Could I add a thought there, Chair? At the project review group, I think it was when Leanne had joined us, but if it wasn't, I'll say it anyway. We were talking about having probably at least 2 events to do with investment priorities. And I'm wondering whether we could in some way combine, if we're getting people together, certainly for the wider event to do with residents as opposed to key stakeholders, we might be able to do something together, and we should consider that in the project review group. My instinct, given that I have a sort of leading role on community engagement, is to ask at the very early,
yes,
in case we miss some really great ideas.
Yeah, that's why I think it's quite important that we consult as early as possible, because what we don't want to do is to spend money with any consultant redesigning, because that's going to cost, that could cost more. I don't know whether it will or not, but I would have thought that if he designs something and then we have to incorporate other stuff in it, that could lead to increased costs.
I agree with this, but I think we're going slightly out of scope of the conversation because we're talking about feeding in comments on the design brief. The plan of procurement and consultation will be for the project review group going forward. So I think these are all really valuable points, but I don't think this is the right point in the process to talk about them.
I'm not sure I agree.
Could we remit it from this committee? Could we actually ask the project review group to consider this issue before the specification goes out? Because I think it covers more than highways, but it's something that obviously we've discussed and have views on.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that when the specification goes to project review group, part of the conversation will be, do we want to do something in consultation now? Do we want to start them off on, don't forget, it's a two-phase process. So the first phase is just, actually, is there anything ambitious we can even do in the village centre? So we might want to do that first, but I think this is all up for conversation in the project review group in terms of phasing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Liss residents, or the residents of the parish of Liss, need to be included as key stakeholders in the list.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
I'm not sure if Leanne's finished yet. Howard, have you finished?
Okay,
Yet?
right.
There's a list in the project initiation document. There's a list of stakeholders.
No, absolutely.
I've got the old one, the one we had for full council. I think it's been updated. I have read the other one online, and I just think that we need to put something about, you know, the people that live in the parish of Liss, who are as stakeholders. They are stakeholders.
Okay, that makes sense. Howard wanted to come in, but I just wanted to check to see if you'd finished, Leanne.
Yes, yeah, for the moment.
I'm sorry, Leanne. So my bandwidth is really low. Would you mind repeating who you wanted added to the stakeholders? Because I didn't get that.
The people of the parish of Liss, residents of the parish of Liss. Can you hear?
Okay, the list of 3.3 is the key stakeholders. Adding 6,500 people to key stakeholders is a bit. I could. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't recognise the people of Liss as you know, having a stake in what's going to happen.
It seems a bit too broad.
I am sure that we can come up with a way to reflect the fact
Yeah.
that we need to consult residents as we take the project forward, which I think what Leanne's saying. So I think we all acknowledge that the residents of Liss are key stakeholders in this, because they're key stakeholders in everything that we do, and that's who we're accountable to when we spend money. So we just need to make sure that the document reflects that well enough, and that consultation with the residents of Liss at the appropriate points is included in there.
Yeah. You don't have to list the 6,000 and whatever name, but you can if you want.
No, I mean, I think it is a bit about terminology though, because I agree that the residents of this should have a say. Of course they should, but I think generally in these sort of documents, when you put key stakeholders, you're actually talking about people who ultimately have some direct financial interest in it, which I know you can argue the people of this do because they pay the precept, but but ultimately I think as well, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, because ultimately the people of this elect councillors to make decisions on their behalf, and yes, we need to listen to what the public is saying. Of course we do, but ultimately we hold the keys to the public purse, and therefore it's our decision on what we spend that money on. And I think that's quite right. That's how the system should work. And so yes, I'm all for public engagement. And I think that's why though we need a consultant to advise us a bit on public engagement, because I think that if we just hold a public engagement event in the village hall or in the triangle or in the pavilion, wherever we hold it, those of us who've been around for some time to probably predict with 90% accuracy who will turn up. And you know and I think that's why we need some outside help to say, how do we get the younger people involved? How do we get those people who wouldn't normally play a part in that involved?
And I think that's a really good point as well, Keith. And that's why actually I think we should take this into the project review group as something that the Highways Committee was interested in. So what does consultation look like, and what is the process of consulting, and when is it in the timeline? Because actually that is something that we can think about as we reiterate this paper and bring a recommendation to the project review group. I think. So Leanne, I think
could I just add a point to that, Chair, which is, this won't be cheap. The consultation bit, and it could be in danger of breaching the 10,000 limit. So to me, trying to double up with whatever consultations we're doing on our investment priorities, could make sense. And I think the project review group should consider that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely. So I think Leanne's finished and has made the comment she wants.
Yeah, if we can have a form of words to put onto the end of 3.3, the key stakeholders.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say something like engagement with the residents of Liss is going to be key to delivery of this project. Something like that is really clear, that we will engage in engagement and consultation with the residents of Liss is key to delivery of the project. I don't want to say what that will look like, because we need to do some thinking around it, but I recognise that's really important.
I don't think we can say at this point what it's going to look like, but we don't want to lose focus on it.
No, that's fair.
So is that form of words acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Howard, your turn.
Yeah, well, I was trying to come in on the suggestion from Leanne. When the village design statement was agreed, the village design group were very active in the village, and the chair was one Margaret Effenberg, who still lives in the village. And when we last discussed doing something about the centre, she was one of the driving forces. So I think what we ought to do without further delay is to send a copy of this document to her for information. And perhaps I think we should consider co-opting her onto whatever committee is going to run with the project, because I think if she's willing to do it, she'll be very good and very useful. So I think that's one person we should get involved with, and she comes up with good ideas, etc., etc. Parking on Station Road is not really a problem.
Oh,
well,
Howard, can you stop for a minute, because we've lost Lizzie. Oh, she's back. It's all right, carry on.
Yeah, parking on Station Road is not really a problem, except when the Indian restaurant is open. We persuaded the county council to put double yellow lines from Western Road round to the front and covering the whole of the front of the Indian takeaway. And the reason for that is somebody coming out of Western Road is blind to traffic coming down the hill as they come out, if there's parked cars there. And quite frankly, there doesn't seem to be any enforcement on that, especially in the evenings. And it's not unusual to walk past there in the evenings and find that every inch of that double yellow line is occupied by a car. So I think that could be looked at. The comment I made about closing Station Road, the pavements are very narrow there, especially for anybody with a pram or pushchair or whatever. One of the things that might take this out of our hands is the Hambarn roundabout. I find increasingly, if you try to get on the Hambarn roundabout from Liss anywhere near rush hour, it's almost taking your life into your own hands. And I think there's a possibility that the Highways Agency might in the future decide to close that. I personally, if I'm travelling from my home to go north on the A3 at anything near rush hour, I drive down to the junction at the end of a Handler's Ash Road and come on there, even though it takes me a couple of miles out of my way. But it's much safer than trying to jump out in front of traffic. And as I say, it could be forced on us. Car parking in the village, I don't think it's that much of a problem. There's, okay, the front of the Hillbrow car park tends to get full sometimes, but there's always space at the back. And I think the only time I've ever seen it anywhere near full was when there was a cycling event and all the cyclists had occupied all the spaces. So, but I don't know, maybe my information is a bit out of date on that. I think the paths and puddles on the paths, that goes all the way up Station Road. So it's not just the village centre that happens. And it's because the county council use a cheap and cheerful method of doing the paths. In fact, the last time they did the footpath on Station Road, I think it made it worse because all they did was put a thin layer of whatever material it is, tarmacadam, on top of the old path, and all where the holes were, they're dips now. And I think the only difference is it's a bit more efficient at keeping puddles going for a long time than it used to be. So there's just some points there. I don't think I have anything else to add at this point in time, but I do think we ought to get hold of Margaret Effenberg, and I do think that if she's willing to be involved, we should consider co-opting her onto the committee that's running with this, because I think she'll be worth her weight in gold.
Thanks, Howard. That's helpful. Keith?
Yeah, I'm not sure of a lot to add really, Andy. I mean, I think the basic premise is good. I do agree with Dan that we need to think about how we do consult wider, and I say I think we particularly need to think about how we consult with younger people. And I do support Howard's idea of getting Margaret Effenberg involved if she's happy to be. I mean, I think that's a big decision for her, but she would provide some useful input. As Howard said, she was very much the driving force behind the original plans to the village centre. And I think as well that we, in a way, things have overtaken us a little bit, because we put together the original thoughts on this in the pre-COVID world, and we're now in the post-COVID world, where I went down to Petersfield this morning and there was one car in the station car park. To be fair, there were only 4 cars in Petersfield station car park, but it's a different world compared to where we were 9 months ago. And so I think we do have to sort of bear that in mind as to what's going to happen and how things are going to change. I mean, we have social distancing now, which we have to bear in mind, and it seems like the end date of that forever is creeping away from us rather than coming towards us. So I think that's something we need to think about when we build things in as well. But the thing as well, I like the idea which Nick brought up, I think, at planning, which was the idea of making the area outside the front of Tesco's much more of a public realm, because I think that's got some real merit to it. Because again, I think there may be a way that, and again, this would be down to obviously experts to advise us, but it strikes me that there may be a way, if we can make that just feel more of a public realm, that actually that in itself has an effect of slowing the traffic down a bit, because people actually feel this is not an area I should be speeding through, it's an area I should be taking a bit of care through. I don't think there's much we can do about realignment of the actual roads because we're very restricted there with what's there. I know, I think somebody mentioned the other night there was a proposal put forward by one of our ex-councillors back in the day to actually reroute the road through between what is the whistle stop and the bowling alley, and actually take the road that way and do away with the roundabout altogether. But I mean, that's now for the fairies, I think.
How you can do that, because it's happening there now, isn't that?
Yes, yeah. I mean, as I say, it's
Yeah.
surpassed.
Yeah.
But I think personally, I think we are at the stage where I think the document as a whole sums up pretty well where we're at. And yes, we do need to go out and see what test the market really, because I do accept Nick's point that actually we might find that this costs far more than £10,000. Who knows? But until we dip our toe in the market and find out who's out there and who's willing to do what, we really don't know. But I think the emphasis really for me is to actually try and get, as I think you want to do, Chair, is to try and get a bit of momentum behind this now and start pushing it forward, because otherwise I suspect 12 months time we'll be sitting having the same conversation, and that's not where I want to be.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keith, for comments. That's absolutely the intention. I hope that we will be able to get a bit of momentum behind this, and I also think COVID-19 might provide some options on highways that we never thought were possible. If traffic is reduced in the village, then actually maybe doing something with the roads through the centre of the village is an option where Hampshire Highways would never have considered it before in terms of walking and cycling. So now is the right time to re-look at things where we have assumed it's not possible, with the possibility of a new light, I think. Anyway, thanks for your comments. Sheila.
Just come back one more thing, actually, Andy, that's just struck me, is that it's saying about COVID and the effect on teens and what may or may not be possible. I was actually in Petersfield this morning, and I don't know how many of you have been in the centre of Petersfield lately, but the road changes are quite dramatic. Now, some of that's down to COVID, some of it's down to the work that SSE are doing. But I think if someone had told me, probably even 3 months ago, that you could close a bit of road between the Oxfam shop and the Square Brewery and it would work, I'd have said you'll have total chaos. It just won't work. But I was down this morning, do you know what? With one exception of a car that went through and ignored the signs totally, it works. And so I think we are in that slightly different world.
I think it might work. I think it might work practically, Keith, but there's been a lot of criticism about what they've done in Petersfield.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Stretch of road, but taking the free parking that's been taken away, where people would park for 10 minutes just to nip into a shop. They haven't got that option now.
No. I'm not saying it's perfect, Leanne. I'm just saying,
That's a helpful contribution. Sheila, is there anything that you want to feed into the
well, I've just done various things and quite a lot of them already come up. I do think we need to give residents a chance to say things. Okay, yes, we represent the people of Liss, but in something quite large like this, quite a big project, then I don't think they're going to thank us for taking all the decisions. The other thing I've thought about is that we need businesses on board, the businesses in Liss. I think, was it Howard said that parking on Station Road wasn't a problem? I think it is. And I have to admit that I think of the section between the level crossing and the whistle stop, because I don't know the other side terribly well. But if we got rid of parking along there, it would make it very much easier, because the parked cars along there, we all know that the level crossing shuts for an extremely long time. I mean, I once stood there for 10 minutes while 3 trains went through and the level crossing didn't rise. And cars coming, trying to get from the station up there.
Yeah.
because there were so many cars queuing to wait for the trains to go through, and Station Road's a nightmare. So I think if you can try and get rid of parking anywhere, it should be that section. I don't know, though, where you would put those cars. Maybe if there was a section of the station car park that could be made a short stay, then that might be a solution. But on the other hand, yes, we're talking about COVID-19. We hope that once there's vaccine, however many years ahead of that, that things will go back to maybe not normality as we know it now, but closer to normality. And so we've got to think about how the roads will appear then and what we can shut off and what we can't. And I think, as somebody said, that closing a section of road in Petersfield is very different to closing a section of road in Liss city centre, which is much smaller and much more packed. Those cars can't really go into the car park on Highbrow Road because, I mean, on some days, especially Thursday, when it's the old people's lunches, it's absolutely impossible to find anywhere to park in there. So if there was the possibility of using some space in the station car park, that might perhaps be the best solution. But I agree that if we are going to encourage residents to have a say, we need to think about how we're going to go about that, how that needs to be done. Yeah.
Thanks, Sheila. All good points.
Could I come back in, please? Comment on that. When I was talking about car parking in Station Road, I was thinking of the outside of the village side of the crossing, where it does have the advantage of it slows traffic down. But on that section between the railway and the centre of the village, that was proposed some years ago by Lisa at Jade News. When I say proposed, demanded, she was very keen on it because she wanted people to stop and use her shop. I thought it was a bad idea at the time and lost the argument. And when I lost the argument, I suggested that we make it a 5-minute slot, because if you limit it to 5 minutes, people will take 10. But the wisdom was to have it for 15 minutes. And that means half an hour and people go and shop elsewhere in the village. If we try to close those, which I think I'm not against saying it'd be a good idea to close them, I think we would have a bit of an eruption of anger from Jade News.
No, that's useful to know. And this really isn't about, it's really good to hear people's ideas, but actually this is about the problems we want to address to give to the consultant to think about as we take this forward. So, you know, these are all very valid issues that we need to address. In terms of consultation, I completely agree. Also, Councillor Edwards has volunteered to act as a bit of a engagement person to engage with businesses. So she has a business in the village centre and has a relationship with a number of the businesses. She thinks they'd be quite supportive of a general approach on village centre improvement, but has offered to help.
Is that not a conflict of interest, Andy?
I don't think it is a conflict of interest in leading the engagement with them. If she was voting on something that could directly improve her shop, like, you know, we use this, one of the propositions in this document was we renovate the shop free of cost because we're doing village centre improvements to all of the shopping space, then that could be. But I don't think using contacts that she has already established is a conflict. And that will be something for Cindy to take a view on personally as well, ultimately. But I don't see it as something. I see it as someone who can act as a good link for us. Just like, you know, I've sort of taken up the conversation with Mrs. Myers at the school. I have a child at the school. Actually, she just left, but I don't see that as a conflict. I see it as a sensible juxtaposition of conversations. But I'll speak to
The issues
Speak to her about it and see if she feels comfortable about it, despite given your concerns, Leanne.
I think, to be fair to Cindy, she probably hasn't been a councillor long enough to understand the rules and when you have an interest and when you don't. And really, if she's going to get close to that, she ought to have a conversation with the monitoring officer and see what he says about it. He's the one that gives the information out.
No, absolutely. That's why I suggested it be for her to take a decision on whether or not she's got a conflict. I was just reporting that from my perspective, it seemed like a good offer.
Yeah.
But I will mention the point to colleagues. Okay, I'm proposing that we draw this item to a close, and because it feels like we've had a good conversation about it.
Look, I've just got one question, if that's okay. The £10,000, where did that figure come from? The £10,000 for the consultant's work?
It came from a finger in the air guesstimate, to be honest with you, because there were a couple of conversations with people who know about this. So I spoke to Joe Forlan at Hampshire County Council, who's their kind of community road infrastructure person. And he said that might be a ballpark, but it was very much just a chance to kind of have a budget to take something forward and move it forward. I think that we should be able to procure under that. If we can't, we will have to come back and rethink. But it was as much of an educated guess as you can get in these sort of circumstances.
Right, okay.
Chair, could I just one thing we haven't discussed, which was the range of expertise we'd be looking for. And I just think that as we have had these discussions, which are more to do with planning, as well as to do with highways, we may need to actually say in the specification, we do want to get someone, it may be more than one person, who can cover both areas of expertise.
I agree with that, Nick, and I think I mean it'll be interesting to see what comes back, to be honest with you. I think if we don't ask, we don't know. But a lot of the stuff that was in there originally was about public realm improvements and kind of ventured into the planning, you know, and street scene world. But I completely agree with you. Part of me is just actually we need to work out what our process is to test the market and take this out there and see what comes back. It may be that we just get told this is impossible, what you want is not deliverable in this way, and we really need to rethink. But actually at the moment I generally don't have any idea about what that looks like out there. And the only way that we as a parish council I think can find out is by putting something out there and having authority to have a conversation with someone and say there is possibly work at the end of this. So that's the kind of key next step. But you're absolutely right.
Great,
Thanks everyone. I will now move on to our next agenda item, which is update on priority projects. First item is village gateways. I provided an update on a number of these in my email that I circulated to the committee on the 4th of July. But since then, I have circulated the indicative proposed locations for the gateway. So I just want to be really clear. The map that went round wasn't where we think that they will go. It was trying to identify the key entry routes to the village where we think gateways should be located. And that kind of came out of a highways conversation previously, as I understand it. I think now might be the time for us to have a conversation about where we think gateways should go. I don't want to kind of get a map and draw it. I'm thinking along the lines of, do we go with the parish line, you know, the administrative parish line, and say, Hampshire, we would like you to cite them on the have a principle of citing them on the administrative parish line where we border with the other parishes, and see where that takes us. The work on actually designing the gateways is making good progress, and I circulated a couple of designs that the South Downs National Park had come up with for us to think about. Basically, the reason why the park are so interested is because, as we noted in our previous meeting, they want to come up with roads in the national park, options of highways improvements for places in the national park. And we have a pot of money that we've agreed to spend on this in section 106 that needs to go. The park have shared those drawings with Hampshire County Council, so the highways engineers can do the technical work around the materials that need to be used. So South Downs National Park have a preference for wood, but Hampshire need to make sure that that's safe wood for use on the highway. And really, this is just an opportunity for us to kind of give initial feedback. My feeling was that I preferred design number 3. I took Nick's point about actually identifying as being in the South Downs National Park as being important, but I'd welcome feedback on the design. The other update is on money, and at the moment it looks like we have enough money in the pot to be able to put gateways on all of the proposed indicative locations that we've identified, subject to final agreement about where they are placed. That is subject to the detailed design work that Hampshire County Council are now doing in terms of what needs to be safe on the highway and working out where to source the information from. If it looks like we do not have enough money in the pot, it will then come back to us to ask us which routes we want to prioritise coming into the village if we can't do them all. But I've said to Hampshire and the National Park, actually, we would like to do them all. And if the money looks like it's there to do them all, can you just do the design first and finalise them for us? The only other...
Agreed 5, that I put in the email, we had agreed 5 originally at a cost of 35,000.
I think it's going to come in. There is 80,000 in the pot for section 106 money that needs to be spent. Otherwise, it's going to get crawled back.
If you look at the list, I haven't got it in front of me, but the list of priority projects that we had set out, and the gateways was one of them. I thought we'd spent the money with the 35,000 on the gateways, and then the other monies on other stuff in the list.
No, as I understand it, there's a significant budget of highways 106 money that hasn't been spent that needs to be spent.
80,000.
Yeah, and that gateways is one of the main routes to spending that, which will help promote our ambition to reduce speeding in the village and declutter at the entrance. So I think that's where we are. The next steps, I think, are us feeding in our comments on the design to South Downs National Park and Hampshire County Council, us agreeing the key routes into the village and giving a steer on the boundary, I think, where we want to see gateways, and finally us beginning to think about how we consult with residents who are affected by the gateway. So Hampshire expect us to do some of that. So I will need to understand what their needs are in terms of highway location, because we obviously have to put it somewhere that works for the highway, but also how do we want to engage with residents who are at gateway sites and residents more broadly. I think that there's something that Nick and I can talk about how we use Facebook, Nextdoor, and our various other routes of engagement to kind of share sites and designs once we have a firmer vision of what we want to do. So that's a kind of update on gateways, and I'm happy to kind of take any feedback on the designs to give to colleagues in Hampshire and SDMP, and on locations in terms of the boundary. Sorry, I'll go. I forgot on the Zoom, so I have to go a certain way around, and I'll go with Sheila first because I went in reverse order last time.
In terms of gateways, I looked at the various designs and I agree option 3 was fine. I can't remember, did that include a 30 sign on it, or was it just the village name? Because
it can.
We were originally looking at, when we originally looked at the gateways, we were looking at actually putting something on the road with the speed limit, and we thought that the gates combined with a road markings would be more effective in slowing people down. So we were going to put, like, whatever it was, 40 or whatever it was, 30, paint it on the road at the point at which the gate, people approach the gate. That was our original thinking.
what about You know, as you go into Selborne, they have a sort of gateway, but it actually is built out into the road, so traffic has to slow down. And in fact, I believe it's sort of one way, there's a priority depending which way you go. But certainly if the gateway is built out slightly across the road, that certainly should reduce traffic. Has that been thought of as a possibility?
The answer to that is absolutely yes. And what we've been shared is only what the gateways could look like. So, and that's a particular issue for the national park. But actually, this is where Hampshire's side of it comes in the highways engineering bit, and build outs will be a key part of that. So what Hampshire have to look at is, where is the safe location on the highway? Because you can't just put these anywhere. It has to be somewhere safe. Is it appropriate to build out at the various different locations? What other signage do we want up there to kind of encourage reduction in speed, while also recognizing we want to declutter? So this is where we're getting to the next phase, as we start pinning down locations and saying, actually, we think that design works. Now, Hampshire, as you turn this into a design that works for you technically, can we start talking about what each of these sites look like now that we are getting to that place? Does that make sense, Sheila?
Yes.
You just look perplexed. I wasn't sure if I explained myself very well or not.
I'm conscious that there are 5 other people, 6 other people who've got to speak.
So do you have any other questions, or should I go around and then? That's fine.
Keith.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm happy with the design. I think design 3 is fine. In terms of location, though, I think I put an email to you. The 2 that I have concerns with are Hillborough Road and Hatch Lane, where I think the gateway should be much nearer to where the signs at the moment saying Liss are, which is much further up the road than they are on the map. Because I think your danger otherwise is we already have residents saying, "Oh, don't we live in Liss anymore?" Then I'm not so keen on the idea of following the parish boundary, because if we do that, then actually on the A3, on the old A3, we end up with a sign down near the Addis Business Park, which I don't think we exactly want to say "Welcome to Liss" there, because I think that really would confuse people.
So I agree with that. So would we say we want to follow the parish boundary where? I'm just thinking, how do we? So because we need to give them a steer so they know where to look for each of the sites.
I mean, my personal feel is I would say let's go with where we have Liss signs now, unless there's the reason why we think we need to move them.
What a good idea! I quite like that. It makes sense.
Okay, can I comment? People are talking about option 3. I can't remember looking at those options. When did we see the options of the design?
They were circulated by email.
When?
We could pause the meeting while I go back into my emails and check if that's helpful.
No, I mean, is it within the last week or 2?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I haven't seen them because my email is not working.
Right.
I'm sorry about that, Howard.
Yeah, so, and I've just given up spending all day, every day, struggling, talking to whoever and getting nowhere.
Howard, I printed you off all the other documents for this meeting and for planning, but I actually went on holiday, so I wasn't able to print and deliver that last item.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't criticising you or anybody else for that. That's my problem. Okay, coming up at the map we've got. I mean, the Andersash Road one is not on the parish boundary, but I think it's probably in the right place. I think the Hillborough Road one should be at the top of the hill, and even that's not quite the parish boundary. I'm not sure there's room on Hatch Lane to put something like that, and Rake Road I'm not sure either, but I think put them where they are. Even the one on Farnham Road going north, I think all that road's within the parish. So I think if you're going to put one there, you should put it as you come off the roundabout at the bottom.
Okay, is that the location where it is on the map at the moment? Just to be
No, it's halfway between the roundabout at the bottom and the junction with Station Road.
I think those arrows are just pointing to the road rather than where they're going to be, where they're intended to be. I think that's it, isn't it? Isn't that what you just said, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it was more the key routes into the village where we thought thought they should go, because you want to acknowledge that you are entering Liss. And today's conversation was a bit about what are the principles that we're agreeing in terms of a steer for where we actually want them to be. And I think what I've heard is where the signs are now, unless there's a good reason to move them, which sounds sensible to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a sign on Andersash Road, but I think it would. Is that okay? But somewhere on that bit between the railway and the roundabouts.
Yeah,
there's a big roundabout and a small roundabout. Probably just the other side of the river from here.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Is that it, or is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's all I really wanted to say.
Leanne, is there anything you wanted to?
Yep. I did originally say that I thought that they should be as near to the parish boundary as possible, but I think it's more important that we incorporate any residential buildings where we place a sign so that people feel included in Liss. And I don't know whether the current signs, given new developments that there have been in Liss, actually are still okay. So maybe we need to look at that as well.
I think.
Sorry.
No, sorry, I interrupted you.
For example, at Farnham Road, the Ham Barn end of Farnham Road, there are some cottages just off the roundabout, which are part of Liss as you come into Farnham Road. So
I think is that not Gretham down there? Those cottages by Harris Caravans, do you mean? Or
yeah, no, that's Liss. That's Liss, because I've delivered Village Voice there.
Are you talking about as you come off the Ham Barn?
Ham Barn.
On the right.
Yeah.
I think they're Gretham.
Not in Liss. They are not in Liss if you look at the parish boundary.
Really?
Yeah, they are not.
Oh, why do we deliver the Village Voice there then?
We shouldn't be.
I haven't done it when I've done that bit of the round, but maybe it's just because I'm lazy.
Yeah, if they're on the list, they're on the list, yeah. But anyway, we need this. If they're in Gresham, then obviously my point is invalid, but it just needs to be as close as possible to the first houses that come under Liss Parish. And I don't know whether all the current signs reflect that.
I think that they pretty much do, thinking about where the development's been and where things are. But I will make sure that we when we say actually put them where they are, unless there's a good reason. A good reason could be because there's been a major development and we should move it. So we'll be clear that that's the feedback.
Okay. On the gateway designs, I'm very sorry, but I didn't like any of them. And the reason I didn't like any of them is because it seems to be all sign and very little gate. And for those who were present a couple of 18 months, a couple of years ago, when we had the original discussions about the village gateways, some of us who had seen the village gateways in other Hampshire villages had been quite impressed by the tall white gates with a kind of vertical sign, which stood out as you entered the village. And I suppose if you're entering at night time, the white will show up in your lights. and I just felt that the signs, the gateway draft designs were all sign. You couldn't really see the gate, and if it's in a natural wood, I think you'll see even less of it. It was quite small and squat, rather than the Hampshire design ones, which are quite tall and slimmer, and have much more of an impact when you're driving towards the village. And I take a point that's been made that we ought to have something about being in the South Downs National Park if we want to market ourselves as being, you know, a destination within the South Downs National Park. I think we need to have that on the sign. Do we also need something like "Welcome to Liss," either on the sign or somewhere else? And with regard to the logo, because I think design number 3 had the logo on it of Liss Parish Council with the locomotive. I don't know whether that's officially the logo of Liss Parish Council, or whether it's something we might change in the future. And do we want to go with a logo on the gateway that we might change in the future?
So on the gateway design, I think you've hit the eternal problem of the demands of the South Downs National Park versus the demands of highways engineers, and this is what they're wrestling with in trying to use us as a pilot place to see what works. So I think we can feed back. Actually, we thought that there'd be more gateway in the gateways, but actually having things that are natural and reflect the national park is one of the key bits of the landscape and highways ambitions of the national park. So we might need to offer a bit of flexibility on that. I would suggest we could feed in the comment about actually we were hoping for a more defined gateway that might help control speeding.
Yeah, you can't see the gate for the size of the sign. And
see what the Hampshire designers come up with as they engineer this into something that works from a safety perspective on the highway, as well as what SDMP would like for the purpose of, you know, the visual utility and identity of the place.
And also, as I mentioned before, in the previous highways committees, when we discussed the original gateways, we talked about having road markings, a speed on the road, in conjunction with the gates, to which we thought would be helpful, more helpful in slowing people down as they approach the village.
I will feed this all back in. The gateway design is very much just the design of the gateway, not the design of the layout or the building to the road. Yeah. Okay. It was very much just a SDMP have been thinking about what an SDMP gateway would look like, and those are the 3 things that their design officers and landscapers have come up with for us and Hampshire to say, actually, what about this and what about that? So this is a really helpful opportunity for us to help steer the development of these things.
Yeah, well, maybe a taller gateway, a taller gate.
Okay.
The sign might look better on a taller gate.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, Leanne?
With regard to the gateways, I don't think so. I just think a white colour would help to be more reflective at night. I just felt that the natural wood looked a bit flimsy, but that might have been just the drawing that they made.
I think it is one of the concerns of the highways engineer that I've seen on the conversation that I'm in on email is, how do we make it robust enough for the highway to withstand an impact, but also flexible enough on the highway so if it is impacted, it doesn't kill someone by going through a windscreen or something like that. So these are all of the design issues that they're wrestling with, as now the SDMP have given them their kind of initial steer on what things could look like.
Yeah, that was it for the gateway.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Nick next, even though Claire's slightly alphabetically ahead just because she's not participating.
Well, first of all, on location, I'm getting feedback. Can people mute if they're not speaking? It just interferes with my brain. On the location, I was going to say I was really happy with the judgment of Solomon, by which I mean Keith, but I think it's even better now with, keep them where they are unless there's a good reason to move them. By and large, if you have something that exists and you then replace it, you get less problems with people opposing it than if you put something in a radically different place. But my main concern was about the design, which, like Leanne, I just didn't like any of them. And I do think something that is prominent would be desirable. I accept that there may be safety issues about having something too sort of solid, but a nice gate with a sort of sign on it in white so that people notice it would have been my preference. But at the risk of being a gloomster and doomster, as Prime Minister would say, I just wonder whether wood is advisable. And I'm just thinking about that bus stop by the evangelical church in this forest, where within a short time after it was erected, some vandals went and broke up one side of it, and it had to be repaired. And whether wood might be, might be chancing our arm, but I may just be being too gloomy on that. So my instinct would be to go for metal in a gate style in white that might be mistaken for wood because it's painted, but that's my pennyworth.
That's really helpful, and I think this is why they've shared the design, so they can get feedback from us as they work it forward. And as I've said, Hampshire are doing the due diligence, so we will feed back our thoughts on the back of this and see where they get to. This is going to be one of those ones where we all have to give a bit. The National Park will have to give a bit, because we're not going to have leaves on the gateway and all of the lovely stuff that the National Park would expect to fit in with them. Hampshire will probably have to give a bit because they're going to be producing something that's slightly more bespoke to recognise that we're in the National Park. They quite like to just buy something off the stocks that they've already got agreed. We'll probably have to give a bit just because we need to follow the advice of the engineers and probably at least help SDMP deliver something that works for them as well. But I think there is a sweet spot in all of this as we take it forward, where we should be able to get somewhere and something that's good, that helps reduce speeding and gives us a clear identity. But this is all really useful feedback to take back to colleagues as we kind of build the process. It's iterative and we need to make sure we get it right. Claire, anything you want to add?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Told you I'd ask.
I've got one thing to add. I know that Nick was saying about metal. I'm not sure about metal. I think that there's a possibility that people might take it and take it down to scrap metal merchants. But it made me think of, do they have any recyclable material? Can they make it out of recycled plastic? That would be good.
I mean, we will say that no one was particularly inspired by the materials. There was worry about wood and sight being visible in the dark, and the longevity of it. So what other options are there around recycled materials or other materials? And we'll see what they come back with. And it's a process we're going through. So we'll feed this all back to them.
Okay.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is cycling and footpaths right of way. And I don't know if there is anything to update, Leanne, but I just thought we should cover it in case there is anything you want to add.
Very little really, except that I'd asked Lizzie to send out an email earlier this year, which she did, asking for volunteers amongst parish councillors to walk some of the paths from between September and November and report back on the state of them. I've also got 2 people from my road who I talked to during lockdown about what we were doing, and they are walkers and they're very happy to walk some of the paths, probably the longer ones, I would have thought. I don't know how many parish councillors actually responded to the email that went out about volunteers. But anyway, that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, so we actually did get a good, reasonable response. Obviously, some of those councillors are no longer councillors, but I was planning on resending. The problem we've had this year is the rights of way, the cutting didn't actually happen as normal. So I've been looking into whether or not we can use lengthsman hours for those cutting rights of way, but whether or not we might be reimbursed by Hampshire County Council if we do use our lengthsman hours to do that. But yeah, it might be twice as many rights of way that need cutting next year because of the knock-on effects of COVID.
Yeah, but we've got some volunteers, and we could also approach the two people that or the ones who are no longer councillors, and you know, ask if they would still be willing to do that.
I'm sure they will be, and we'll have plenty of time if we start it in September.
Yeah, so you know, it's all in hand.
Could I just say that I'm happy to be added to the list? I just forgot to email at the time.
You're added.
A likely story, Councillor Wilson.
We'll give him twice as many now.
I think I've volunteered as long as I can take the dog.
You absolutely are on the list, Sheila, and you can definitely take your dog.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Did you put me on the list, Lizzie?
I would assume so, yeah. I mean, like, you're going to be a big factor in that. I think you walked all of them last time, Leanne, so.
Me plus one.
I'm happy to do walking as a walker rather than a cyclist. One of the problems I have is cyclists are sometimes not very considerate to walkers. And I see that guidelines came out from Parish yesterday to say that cycle lanes and walking lanes have got to be physically separated, not just a bit of paint on the floor. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I think it's important that pedestrians have the right of priority, shall we say.
Thank you for the update, Leanne. Thanks for everyone's contribution. Sounds like we've got a few volunteers there. So, Councillor Budden, somehow public transport snuck back on the agenda despite a conversation we had. I obviously can't keep a good subject down into AOB. So, do you want to let us know what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just to update people on where we are with public transport in the COVID world that we find ourselves. Obviously now on both trains and buses, people have to wear masks, and overall that seems to be being followed. There is a worry on South West Railway because at the moment, just in case people aren't aware, what's happened is that on March the 23rd, when we all went into lockdown, the government went into emergency measures on the railways, which effectively meant that they said to the railways, you keep running at normal service or at 50% service it was then, and whatever the shortfall is in fares, we will make it up so that you still get paid effectively the same amount of money as you would have done as your franchise for running the franchise. Which was probably good news for South Western Railway, because I think otherwise they would have had less money through penalties. But anyway, that's been the one side. The issue now that they're having is, and I suppose this is true of so much of what's happened with public messaging generally, is that it's almost been too successful, because the railways now are a safe way to travel. The ridership on the trains is incredibly low. Even at peak times, South Western Rail are only having 17% of their normal ridership, where they know they could easily have 50% of their ridership and still keep everybody successfully socially distanced on the trains. And so there is a message going out through the East Hants Rail Partnership and through other rail partnerships to actually say to people, if you're going to have a staycation this year, if you're staying in the UK and you're going on your holiday, please think about using the train, because actually it's a safe way of getting there. Because what is again uncertain from I think the government point of view, from a meeting that I had with some management at South Western Railway 2 weeks ago, is they're very nervous about what happens after October when the emergency measures come to an end, because they're saying at the moment, okay, at the moment everything's fine. They can run a train with 6 people on it and it really doesn't worry them because they're getting the same money as they would normally for that train. But come October, if the train's only got 6 people on it, they're not going to run the train, because it just makes no sense at all to do that. You know, the cost of running the train from London to Portsmouth is, I don't know what it is, but it runs into thousands of pounds each time. And if you only got 6 people on the train, then the maths just don't add up. So that's something which we wait and see. There's quite a bit of lobbying within the rail industry at the moment to the government saying you need to extend this scheme. Now, whether the Chancellor will feel that that's something he wants to do in his autumn statement, we wait nervously to see, but hopefully he does, because otherwise I think we should find a radically reduced train service come January from what we're used to. On the plus side, it has to be said that South Western Railway are very committed to the community rail partnership and to working with groups to keep the stations together and to actually making the station a better environment for everyone. And we actually have money within the East Hampshire Rail Partnership, which we were given this year, which we've not spent because we've not been able to, because volunteers haven't been able to be out doing anything because of COVID. And South Western Railway, we thought might say, well, we want that money back, but in fact, they've allowed us to carry the full budget over to next year. So there's actually some good things there. But I think generally it's just to say to people, you know, there does need to be some campaigning, and I think it's something the Parish Council needs to play a role in. And incidentally, I'm lobbying District Council colleagues on this all the time as well, to get the message out there that the public transport is still running and it's safe and you can use it. And it's, you know, because unfortunately, as I say, I think the government message of don't use it, which is what they were putting out for a good part of the initial period, was too successful. And so people aren't using it. I mean, I went on the train today to Petersfield, and at Liss station, there were 2 of us who got on the train, which is probably a tenth of the normal number we would get on at that time at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so it is something that we need to be conscious of, I think. The other thing, which was the main reason I wanted to bring this up as well, was there are some fairly intense discussions going on at the moment about what happens with the children going to bow hunt come September, because we're told that the schools will be fully reopening as normal. People, I don't know if people have seen, but at the time of before the school opens, the number of children on the railway platform at Liss and at Liphook is almost unbelievable. And there's absolutely no way there's any distance, let alone social distancing, between them. And so, but there is some intense negotiation going on at the moment about whether they will be able to use the trains, or whether there will need to be a look to alternative methods for getting those children to and from bow hunt. And that's, you know, something that I think as a parish council we need to be alert to, that problem is there and is, all I can say at the moment is it's under very active consideration, but I don't have any concrete discussions one way or another to share with you at the moment. But I will share by email with councillors, obviously, once we do have some further knowledge on what's happening on that, because potentially it's going to affect a lot of families in this as to how their children get to and from school. And the final thing to say on that, I guess, is that at Liphook, there is the other thing which is going to happen at Liphook, which again is another concern with the children going to bow hunt, is that South Western Railway have a plan to replace the footbridge, because the current footbridge is well and truly life expired. They want to build a new one, but again, that reduces the amount of platform space available, obviously, all the time that they're doing the construction. And so, as I say, I think they're just things that, particularly with children to the bow hunt, we need to be very conscious of. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Next item is speeding, and this was just an acknowledgement. Want to take the opportunity as a committee formally to thank Ian for his work on this when he was a member of Liss Parish Council, and record how grateful we are to him taking the lead on this, so we can record it in the minutes, and wish him well for the future. And the second thing was really to say we have speeding down as one of our priorities that we want to look at, rising from the Labour plan. And we now don't have someone who's leading on it. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think this is particularly about locations of the speed device that we've just paid to repair and where we want to move around the village, but also identifying potential other places in the village where speeding is an issue. So we've got two already, I think, Forest Road and Hillbrow outside the school. Part of the speeding remit would be to say, are there any other places that we need to take action on? So it's just really, I'm not necessarily looking for a volunteer to take this on now, but just to acknowledge that as a committee, we have a bit of a gap there, and ask colleagues to think about if they would be interested in doing something around it going forward, and just let Lizzie and I know if you are, I suppose.
Is Station Road, what the top end of Station Road, past the West Green Recreation Ground, is that on this at all?
I don't think it is, but I think from memory that's where we're putting one of our courtesy crossing in, because we're putting it just before or after the business centre, and I think we're hoping that that highway infrastructure will have a traffic calming role as well, particularly with the one that we'll be putting in outside the pavilion. So two down the road, because
it is quite fast along there, and also past the Madaban, they sort of get up speed past there. But obviously the crossing can slow them down.
So it may be that one of the things we've paid for is a fee to renew our licenses with Hampshire County Council about what posts we want to put the speeding sign on. I never know the technical name of it. Station Road may be one of the places that we want to talk to them about.
Okay.
I think Station Road is important on that. Some years ago, and I don't think it's changed, when the county council did a week or a couple of weeks monitoring and produced the report for every hour, whatever, the average speed was over 30 miles an hour. So the average speed was over the speed limit.
Okay, that's useful to know. So really, this item is particularly about, is there anyone who wants to take the speeding lead? So come to Lizzie and I and let us know if you're interested. I'm planning to take...
Chair, could I just say, I thought you might have tried to pin it on either Sheila or myself, because we are Speed Watch volunteers.
I would never out people like that in public, Nick, but if you did want to volunteer, that would be very graciously received.
Well, no, actually what I was doing, that was building up to saying I'm currently reviewing my priorities in terms of demands on my time. So if Sheila were minded to volunteer, I would be delighted.
No pressure on anyone at the moment. Please come back to us outside the meeting. But I appreciate the gentle nudge from fellow councillors to colleagues. It's good to see. I was moving on now. I was going to take the two items together, as these are essentially kind of highways improvement items. Forest Road is on South Downs National Park agenda now as a potential place to do some design work. When Lizzie and I met colleagues from Hampshire and the South Downs National Park focusing on the school site, we asked them to go and see Liss Forest because of the interesting design decisions that were taken in that location previously around remodeling the highway. I think where we got to with them was there is no easy solution. It's a very confused street scene, and there's no simple way to do it. But they were going to go away and have a think. They also mentioned that Hampshire are looking at they have the community infrastructure process where you can do gateways and things. They're also looking at doing something slightly more complex around proper road infrastructure changes, so putting in things like roundabouts and that sort of thing, which you can't do under the current scheme, I said I thought that Forest Road would be a great place to potentially pilot something like that. And if they wanted to talk to us about how we might work with them on something like that, we'd be very welcome to hear. So I will follow that up. But Forest Road, I think, is a long-term ambition, but a really quite a difficult technical project. So I think it's going to take some time doing that. But I wanted to let people know that it's still on the horizon and still a conversation that we are having. Hillbrow Road emerged out of over the summer, and I think we all collectively agreed that it is an issue, and the project review group looked at it and agreed it is an issue too. This is a combination of someone getting clipped by a car when dropping children off at school on Hillbrow recently, and also a long-held ambition to improve the road outside the school, and also although only partially completed, the interesting location and quality of the current courtesy crossing has been put in on Hillbrow Road. So Lizzie and I met South Downs National Park and Hampshire County Council to discuss what options there were around traffic calming on Hillbrow. We took the view that was from the turning with Andler's Ash Road, so opposite Newman Collard, to past the school to a point at Hillbrow to be decided with them. That the thinking behind that was that fits with our village centre design brief, which stops at the Andler's Ash Road turning on Hillbrow. Where we got to was both authorities think that there is something that can be done with the community infrastructure stuff that is available, both in terms of gateways, but also in terms of building things out into the road, removing road markings, and just generally making it a bit more difficult to judge where the road, how the highway works there, because that's shown that people drive slowly. So I handed over in James's comments to Hampshire County Council and said, please, could you consider these as you develop a proposal? They are working up a proposal to come back to us in September on some ideas about what we could do there, both in the short term and in the long term. My proposition would be that should we have any Section 106 money left over from the gateways, which we've already decided a priority, we spend it on this, depending on what the scheme looks like. And we also add it in potentially as a SIL priority project to bid into the National Parks pot of SIL for 75%. Interestingly, the National Park officers were really keen that we work up joint bids with Hampshire County Council, and Hampshire County Council bid, but saying they have Liss Parish Council support, because they think that would really add weight to the bid when the panel consider it, when they see that the Highways Authority and the local parish support it. So it's technically possible, and also it has local support. So that is where we are on that. And I hope the committee are happy with me taking this forward, and I will look to bring back more detailed design work, as we have done with the gateways actually, and the Station Road crossing once Hampshire have done the work on that, but we are looking to progress it. So I hope that's helpful. Any questions?
Just a thought, if I may.
Yeah, Nick.
I mean, I'm taking it from what you said earlier about your close links with the school, that the school head teachers' views about all this will be quite important in any final decisions, particularly about the exact positioning of the crossing. So when Hampshire County Council come back, I'm sure our views will be really useful, but maybe not quite as useful as hers.
Absolutely. I've already spoken to her about it, and we'll be seeking her views in terms of anything we do around that to make sure the school is content with it. Also, the school itself is looking at doing kind of how it manages the school site on highway, so the parking on the school site and also home to school working. And I've offered to participate on the group that in the school that is doing that work, to provide a link to both the parish council and also to the highways committee, because it makes sense, I think, to have that link. So I haven't heard anything, but I'm very hopeful that we'll continue to build that relationship, and certainly there'll be key players as we devise whatever scheme looks like in the Liss school zone that Lizzie and I christened it, because we obviously need names for things like this. So
could I ask something about the parking on the school? Could the school not just ban parking on their car park for anyone except teachers and official visitors and perhaps people with disabilities?
So that's a matter for the school, but my understanding is they are looking at something like that at the moment. So there are two different parts of the site, though, as I understand it. The first part is the school parking back from the highway, but the bay in front of the straight back slap bang in front of the highway is actually Hampshire Highways land. So
yeah.
What, if anything, we could do part of our thinking as we do the Hillborough Road work? It may be that we have a short-term thing that we can do on some speeding stuff and a longer-term ambition that we want to do, but that's all part of that conversation, and it's very much it's in the mixer. Let's see what the options are with the engineers at the moment.
Okay.
Can I ask, sorry, can I ask something? Before Ian resigned, he was talking about consulting with the head teacher about not repositioning the entrance so that the children actually came into the school through the playing field. Was that what he was suggesting? Making an entrance from Newman Collard into the school that way, so that they wouldn't have to have all the problems with the road at the bottom of Hillbrow. Did that come to anything?
I think what he was talking about, and I need to ask him just to be sure, is making more use of the entrance that is already available from Newman Collard and the playing fields to the school. There's actually a footpath that runs right alongside the lower end of the infant school that goes through to Newman Collard, and I think it was about how do we encourage more people to use that car park and potentially the Hillborough Road car park, and park and stride from there through Newman Collard playing field to the school. But I will pick that up with him if I can find his contact details to just double check that was what he intended. But there is definitely a footpath from Newman Collard playing field to the school already.
Can I just say that he also shared these thoughts with me? So if you want to have his contact details, I can certainly provide them. I think it would go down very well if you could ask him for his views.
I would, assuming that's GDPR compliant, and I'll look at Keith to advise me outside the meeting, I'd be very happy to get in touch with former councillor Ian James and explore what exactly his Newman Collard walking scheme was. Any other questions on either of those two things? I just wanted to make sure people knew what the work was and the plan. It's at very early stages. Were you going to say something, Keith, or did it just jump to you?
No, it just jumped to me.
Okay, then I think we can. Actually, I didn't ask Claire. I said I'd ask you for each item, even if that's a no. Okay, right. I think we're on any other business. Is there anything else that anyone wants to raise?
I just wanted to raise something that I went through some of the older minutes of the highways, and in the past we had talked about changing styles around Liss, around the walkways of Liss, into kissing gates. We just floated the idea, but it kind of never went any farther. I think it was an ex-parish councillor who raised it.
I'm sure the Highways Committee would be happy to consider any proposals on what that might look like. And I'm going to point it a bit back at you because that looks perfectly to me in cycling footpaths rights of way. So if you want to do some work on it then and bring something back to us, that would be absolutely brilliant in my mind.
If I can just come in on that, I think Leanne, and I to the life of me, I can't remember the name of the person to talk to, but I do believe that the South Downs National Park actually have that as one of their long-term aims as well, which is to replace stiles with kissing gates because it makes footpaths more accessible.
Yes.
So it'd be worth probably having a conversation. I would suggest you go by Chris Patterson.
Chris
And
Patterson.
And
Right.
I don't think it is Chris dealing with it, but he'll certainly be able to point you to the right person.
I'll do that.
I think that's a national tendency, and I know the Ramblers are providing workforces to do that in various parts of the world or various parts of the country, I suppose.
Okay. Thank you, Leanne, for holding us to account on what we've agreed in the past. I think that's really important. Is there any other business? Okay, then I formally declare this Highways meeting closed. And if I had a hammer, I'd hammer it down. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.